Hey everybody! So in this video, myself and Max from the Maxine Gutman channel, first link in the description, are going to be talking about what it is like to be the host. The upsides, the downsides, and everything in between. So really hope you guys enjoy this. So, hello! What would you say your personal experience is with the most, I guess, positive aspects of being the host? What would you say?
Well, I guess one of the positives that come to mind when being the host is sort of having the job of being the representative of the system in a way. So, in many ways, because the host is the part that's in charge of daily living and takes care of that, they are the barrier between what's happening in the external world and what's happening in the internal world. And that does grant a lot of perspective, I guess, on what's going on. And I feel like hosts do get a wide variety of different experiences and perspectives. And so that's definitely a positive that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I can definitely relate to feeling like that's a positive. I think for me, the biggest positive is that people don't think twice about when they're talking to you, you know?
Yeah.
They automatically just validate your personhood without considering you less than real.
They don't see you as a part of many. They see you as the main one and the real one, quote unquote.
Yeah. Even though that's completely silly because, we're all technically exactly the same. We're
Right.
all quote unquote alters.
Absolutely. It's just one alter is out more frequently, basically, than others, or has lived a more substantial chunk of the life than others, and that doesn't make them a more valid individual. So, but it
Exactly.
does definitely come being a host. Like you do get validated much more than I think other alters in most systems.
Yeah, definitely. I would personally say, too, another positive would be that you always have some backup,
Yeah.
Because being the host means that everybody else in the system is going to automatically want to back you up because
Yeah.
you need to be functional, because that's your job.
Exactly. That's your job. So it's like having a team helping you get through some of the hardest parts of life. And this is kind of sort of on that. That's not necessarily always positive, but has definitely helped me a lot. Is sometimes in hard moments, I can get some backup and ask for protectors to come, and that's something that I think hosts tend to have more frequently than, and it also goes into with like memory and what you remember and being able to get through life because some of the other alters store some of the harder memories.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I personally think is probably a positive is that, we don't have to constantly worry about slipping into the inner world and getting stuck there. That's a
Yeah,
positive.
yeah, that's definitely a positive. Some hosts can definitely change over the course of a system's life. For the most part, I have pretty good access to the external world.
Yeah, and I mean, even if hosts change, it's usually a voluntary thing. It's not something that
Yeah,
happens outside of your
like
own
getting
will.
stuck away, hold back.
Yeah. You can't just get
Um,
yanked in.
yeah, no, it's a voluntary switch. Yeah. I guess this is kind of a positive too. I would say, as hosts, we get at least for hosts that have been there for a long time, like a concrete sense of identity. Which I feel like, at least in my system, not every single alter has, and they're kind of trying to figure out what their likes and dislikes are, and they sometimes feel less real, quote unquote, because it's not so concrete or tangible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, personally, I have trouble figuring out who I am half the time just because of what our
Yeah.
particular past was.
Right, right, right.
What would you say would be the biggest negative to being the host for you?
Well, honestly, apart from the constant denial and like self-doubt, which is just a constant truth, I would say the hardest thing I've dealt with as host has really been um, the stigma. The stigma is really bad.
Yeah. It's not cool. I mean, so many people automatically assume that, you know, the movies and the media are realistic and they're just not.
Yeah, no, they don't accurately portray the disorder in any way.
I would say personally, other than the stigma, because that always is terrible, that
Yeah,
one of the biggest downsides to being the host is the fact that you really don't have the same freedom to walk away from a situation as the other members of the system do. You kind of have to stick it out because that's your job, even if it's unpleasant.
absolutely. And like I was saying in the positives, how because we're sort of the representatives in a way of the system, we also bear a lot of the consequences of the actions of other alters because we are the parts in charge of daily living.
Yeah.
So that's a really hard thing, and yeah, it's just you have to take in mind everybody basically all the time.
Yeah, and it does. It can get really exhausting to constantly have to balance your needs and everyone else's needs and appearing quote unquote normal in society and trying to function day to day, and especially when you have, more than just a couple of people in your system, it gets really complicated.
Yeah, I know it gets exhausting, and it leaves very little time just for you to enjoy.
Yeah. And I mean, it does get better over time, especially with therapy and learning cooperation. I mean, that does get easier, but it never stops being difficult.
Right. It's always a balancing act, even, and the goal is basically to get everyone working together as best as possible.
Yeah, and the other thing too that I think is probably a strong difficulty with being the host is that you're never really allowed to mess up without it negatively affecting everybody. You're so
Yeah.
responsible for everybody. And if they mess up, even if you don't remember it, it's your fault.
Yeah. Everything falls on you in a lot of ways.
Being the host puts you in an odd position because legally you're responsible.
Right. And you're also the one interacting most like frequently with other people. So in the eyes of others, you're responsible.
Exactly. And another thing too that I've always found to be really difficult is that as the host, I find I get a lot more bleed through than the other members of our system do.
I was
Like,
just gonna bring that up. Like the
yeah,
past influence is also exhausting.
exactly.
And constantly questioning who am I, like you know, because it's not always so obvious who is out when,
Yeah,
and sometimes I'm just confused. In fact, most of the time.
yeah. And the other part about that that's difficult is that you're not really sure what's you, what's somebody else, where it's
Right.
coming from, why it's there. Is this from the past? Is this from the present? It,
I feel like a lot of being a host is in a way like detective work
yeah,
because it's like figuring out the pieces that other alters have left and putting together memories and just trying to figure out where certain feelings are coming from, and that takes like a certain introspection that
yeah.
comes with time and therapy.
And another thing too that I've personally experienced a lot of is that you can find yourself in a situation where there's a lot of co-consciousness happening or a lot of blending happening, and then you really don't know who you are anymore because you're not sure if it's you or if it's somebody else or if it's lots of people all at the same time.
Yeah, and then just like sometimes the actual voices themselves can be overwhelming in those scenarios, or just the like pushes of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like carrying a lot of different things at the same time, and like juggling them, and having to also keep it like take into account your own needs and wants. It's an exhausting job. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I personally have always felt is frustrating is that when it comes down to it, nobody ever really stops and asks themselves if you have issues. You know, it's always
Yeah.
automatically assumed that everyone else in the system has problems, but you're expected to just be functional and okay all of the
Right.
time.
All the time. And like, for example, for me, I've only been in therapy for a year and a half for my DID, and a lot of the focus has been on memories and the other parts, and it's hard to talk about my own issues because it feels so overwhelming to take into account everybody else's. So sometimes it's lonely being the host.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, and it can be easy to fall into the trap of wanting to take care of everybody else at the expense of taking care of you.
Yeah.
You know, you want to fix everyone else's issues and you forget that your own issues matter too.
Right, and they're just as important, and they affect the system just as much.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot of hosts put themselves second to the rest of the system. I found.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot too. And it's not really a fun place to put yourself in because then you end up having breakdowns that could have been avoided just because you're not really taking care of your own needs too.
Absolutely, it becomes overwhelming after a while.
Yeah, and I mean, being in therapy as long as we have, I've had to learn how to delegate to other members of the system. Hey, you know, I need you to do these things because I just don't have enough time and energy and emotional wherewithal to do them. So,
Right,
you know, can you take care of these things while I take care of these other things over here?
like spreading the love, basically.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still in the initial phases where the self doubt and the continuous denial gets in the way, and I feel like I have to be in charge of everything, and it's really hard to let go of the control. Um, and that is something I think a lot of like younger hosts or people who have just been diagnosed go through. Um, but that's kind of where I'm at. So it's like an exercise of trust in a way to delegate.
Yeah, it definitely is a big step and it does take time. I mean, it took me a very long time to be able to say, okay, I can't do everything by myself. It's not possible. You know,
Yeah,
we're not made to.
we're not designed for that exactly.
And the other difficult thing is, I mean, even now, when it comes to switching, it's still hard to not want to stay co-conscious, even if I probably shouldn't.
Right, just to give yourself the mental break almost.
Mm-hmm. It's just really hard to let go. I can't do it on purpose. It generally, if it happens, it's forced.
Yeah,
Somebody else
yeah.
basically knocks me out, throws me in the trunk, and says, go take a nap.
Go take a nap. Your time is done. Yeah. No, for like us, it's definitely I panic when I feel a switch coming. That's my
Like you were
experience.
talking about earlier with loneliness, I definitely
Yeah.
relate to that because it does. It gets lonely being the host because you don't have the same connection to everyone
Right.
else. You're kind of stuck in the middle.
Absolutely. Like the bridge. And I
Mm-hmm.
find even my access to the inner world is not it's not as fluid or as tangible as some of the other members of my system. Um, so yeah, it's kind of like I'm the odd one out.
Yeah, I find that a lot too. I mean, I can't just pop in and live there like the
Right.
other members of the system can. I can see it, I can interact with it, but there's always a barrier between me and it.
Right, exactly. That's the same experience for me, and I think that's a pretty common experience for a lot of hosts, where their access to the inner world is in one way or another different or less accessible than other members of their system.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even heard of some hosts that they can't access the inner world at all unless they're just
Yeah,
completely and totally shut down and pushed in there.
right, right. Yeah, for some hosts, they never, and that was me for a long time. It took a lot of work to get to a point where I could actually see what was happening in the inner world.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it takes time, it takes work,
Yeah.
and it takes effort to get to the point where you can access anything in the
Yeah.
inner world.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing that I ever personally learned in therapy is that as a system, we have control over our inner world. If we band
Yes.
together as a team, we can make it be what we need it to be.
Right. Which should be, for many people, I think, a safe space.
Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Alright, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you got a lot out of it, seeing me and Max talk about being the host. And if you did like this video, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Have a good day, everybody.